you doing?
I'm doing good, doing good. Going ahead and get started this interview. Before we start, I just gotta give our little details. Everybody, this is Joseph. He just won his pro card recently, and like I said, this is obviously a community page. So make sure to subscribe. Oops, not subscribe. Make sure to follow us. Make sure to use the hashtag Classic Physique of the Week to submit your pictures so that you can be featured on the page. And go ahead and do that, all right? Because like I said, we always go look through the page so we can keep updating and posting on our page. And you also win prizes every time you win each week. We send prizes out to you. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you guys named Joseph. Just named Joseph Tolve. He just won his pro card just recently, not too long ago, and he's also an officer. So go ahead and tell us about yourself, man.
Well, I've been bodybuilding for over 30 years. I started out when I was about 15 years old. I won multiple team titles, and then I got into law enforcement. And as time went on, I kind of put that off to the side, and I started doing recreational bodybuilding. I didn't really compete, and as the years went on, I tried to get back into it in 2013, and I went into bodybuilding, and I did well, but I just got outsized all over the place because I'm kind of a tall guy, and I don't carry the mass that you would really need to be on the professional level in bodybuilding. So I kind of got away from it a little bit more. Then they came out with Classic Physique, and I took a look at that, and I said, this might be something I can get involved in. So 2 years ago, I began to train up for to maybe think about doing a classic show. Last year, I jumped in, and I did a show early in the season, NPC Powerhouse out in Connecticut. I ended up winning the whole show. I even took out the bodybuilder because he went into classic. He crossed over in, and that qualified me for nationals. I competed in the universe last year, and I ended up taking second place. Took second place in the over 40, and I took third in the 35. So I missed the pro card by one spot. So I left that. It was an awesome year, but I had unfinished business. So last off season, I looked at my structure, and I said, we got to tweak a few things here and pack on some size in some certain areas. I did that. I mean, I prepared for this thing like my hair was on fire. We went into the universe this year again. I ended up winning the over 40, and I took second in the 35 and up. And I just had a great day. I turned pro, and now I got my work cut out for me. I'm not young. I'm 46 years old, and I got to compete in pro shows now. So I'm kind of reevaluating, seeing how my body's holding up, and I'm planning on doing the New York Pro next year if my body holds up, and God lets me do that. So that's the plan for now.
That is an awesome story. So now since obviously you got your card now, what do you think worked this time on your prep compared to any other time? Like what changed in you that said, all right, this is the body that I definitely can take up there to the next level?
Bodybuilding is a funny thing. It depends on who you talk to. If you talk to the average bodybuilder that doesn't get on stage and doesn't compete, they'll tell you, "Oh, I just want to put on 10 pounds and of muscle, and I want to compete next year." That's great, but if you just put on 10 pounds all over your body, essentially, you're going to be the same bodybuilder, just 10 pounds bigger. In classic or in physique or what I do is you need to really look at your body and say, what's going to make me more aesthetically pleasing? Are my lats big enough? Is there enough sweep in my quad? Do I have that traditional X frame that they're looking for in classic? If I just added 10 pounds of lean tissue all over my body, I'm not really changing the shape of my body. So what I did was I looked at my body. I had a couple of friends say, you know what, Joe, we need to add a little bit more delt. We need to widen you out a little bit more on top. We actually got to chill out on the quads a little bit because they're a little bit too much, and we need to add more hamstring. So I was looking to change the actual shape and composition of my body, not necessarily try to just throw on a bunch of mass all over the place without the programming being in the right spot. So I took a really I took the approach I took wasn't really to just bulk up. It was definitely
Right.
zeroed in on certain areas of my body. And when it was all said and done, I'll tell you this, and people think this too. I went up to 252 pounds in the off season, and I compete on stage at about 212. You're talking 40 pounds. At all of that, at the end of the year, after all that body weight was put on, and when I came back down, I figured that I only gained about 3 or 4 pounds of lean tissue, virtually killing myself all off season trying to put muscle mass on. So these people that think that they can go out there and you're going to put on 15 pounds, you're not. That's my experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So as a person that's in service, like I said, you're a police officer, and definitely there's a lot of bodybuilders that do, and I have a lot of respect for it. How are you able to prep while being a police officer? How does that work, especially in New York?
I'm having trouble hearing you. Somehow we lost the. Can you reconnect me somehow?
Yeah. Are you able to hear me now, or is it still really laggy? Do you hear me?
Yeah, I could barely hear you, but go ahead. Try to ask. I'll try to hear you.
So how is it like being a police officer while trying to prep for a bodybuilding show? How does that work?
Well, most police officers, like myself, we work rotating shifts, so it's hard to get your meals in on a consistent basis. But with bodybuilding, that's the name of the game. If you're not consistent with your meals and your body isn't set in a certain biorhythm, it could throw things off. A lot of things like water retention, protein synthesis, things like that. So no matter what shift I was working, I tried to maintain the food that I was taking in around the same time, so my body got used to a certain level of intake. And the same thing was with water. If your water isn't stable and your sodium isn't stable and your body's not used to getting it at a certain time of day or whatever it is, you will get a water reaction that you don't want, basically, when you're coming down in prep. So toward the end of prep, I tried to manipulate my schedule. I did take a couple of days off here and there where things are pretty stable across the board. So homeostasis could set in and my body was regulating. So it would be a little bit more predictable coming down. It's still a roll of the dice, though, coming in. I learned a lot from last season, how I reacted to, certain diet and, getting my body into diuresis and throwing water off and stuff like that. So I had some good information, which is it's not cookie cutter. I couldn't tell you this is what you need to do and it's going to work for you, because it doesn't. I have friends that have tried to do what I do and it doesn't work for them that way. So it's a lot of trial and error coming down. This year I was able to really dial it in and nail it. But being a cop and being a bodybuilder, not just because I do it, but all the guys that are out there working, whatever your job may be, if you're working rotating shifts, very, very difficult to do. Very difficult to do. You have to be consistent.
Okay. So what kind of way would you help for people who are more older? How would you help them try to get in shape? Because now a lot of guys are able to, maybe was into bodybuilding for, a decade or so. But if let's say I was 40, how would you try to tell them how they approach bodybuilding if they want to change their physique?
You're talking about older bodybuilders.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is another thing. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be older bodybuilders. A lot of people are under the misconception that they need to do a lot of overloading on their joints to create muscle hypertrophy. I'll tell you this. There's a lot of movements that are very popular movements that a lot of people like to do because they just like to move a lot of weight around. I don't necessarily do that. If you see me train, I'll squat. My legs are massive. I'll squat maybe once every 3 weeks. But a lot of the mass that I've built on my legs was done off of machines, and I vary rep ranges. 1 week I'll go a little heavier, 6 to 10 reps, and then the next week I'll take the same exercises, swap the order around, and I'm doing 15 to 20 reps. But for an older guy, and if you're doing this as long as I've been doing it, I'd be hard pressed to believe you're not going to have some shoulder issues and lower back issues and knee issues, because you have a finite amount of cartilage in your body, and you're eventually going to wear it down if you're doing movements out of position. If you're doing pressing movements, especially straight bar stuff as you're older, and you're rolling your shoulders up out of joint when you're pressing, you're going to wear that cartilage down. So you want to make sure you're locked down and back, and your pressing movements are stable. I find for older bodybuilders and older, guys in general, do your movements from supported positions and just target those muscles that you're trying to target. There's really not a whole hell of a lot of difference from me doing a supported bicep curl over a preacher bench, changing the angles, than if I'm standing with a bar and swinging, pulling my front delt into it, rocking the lower back and forth. Hypertrophy-wise and building lean tissue-wise, you show me the difference. There's not. The difference is you're rocking your body around and you're pulling different muscle groups into it, and you're hurting your joints in some way because you're pulling out of position. So my advice is to get into more stable platforms and just put your mind on the areas that you're trying to work. That mind-muscle connection is a very real thing. And if you don't have that and you don't understand the anatomy of the body and what areas you're trying to work, you're not going to be a very, very good bodybuilder. So that's
All right.
what I would say to that.
Okay. For my next question, do you think you could share what your training split is like right now?
I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm sorry. My training split, I have a lot of them. There's nothing that I usually do that's going to be consistent throughout the year. I write my own programs. I'll usually train 3 days straight, and then I'll take a rest day. Off season, I do very little cardio. I'll walk for 15 minutes post training on an incline. I'll keep my heart rate around 120. But I'm a big believer in you need to rest your body. So 3 days, 4 days tops, then I'm taking a rest day, and then I'll go back in. The split is basically like this. I will take most of my body and I will train it twice a week. If I have a weak area that I'm trying to bring up, I will try to train that 3 times over 8 days, but I will lower the volume down in that area. For instance, if I was going to hit my shoulders twice a week, because it was an okay area for me, I may run 12 to 14 sets twice a week through that. But if it was a weak area for me and I wanted to stimulate that muscle group a little bit more, I may drop the 12 to 14 sets down to maybe 8 sets, but I'll do it 3 times over the course of 8 days, so I'm hitting it with more frequency. That's the premise of what I do, and I've gotten great success out of that. But you got to pick the areas on your body that you think are the weak areas, and then you can start to program and work it in like that.
Okay. So now since your off-season since you're preparing for the New York Pro, what body parts are you trying to develop right now to get ready for it?
All of them. Okay, so for nationals, I topped out at if you look at my Instagram and you watch the comparisons, you'll see that I'm more massive than most of the guys that are up there, because I tried to come in at the top of the class for my height. Classic is 5'11" to 6 feet. I'm just about 6 feet tall, so they allowed me 212 pounds. When you get to the pro league, there's an additional 10 pounds that they add on top of that for pros. So that's another 10 pounds of lean tissue that I'm going to have to contend with other guys that I'm going to be competing against. And mind you, there's no masters division in the pros. You're in with everybody. So even at 46 years old, I'm competing against 22-year-olds. So I'm liking how my symmetry is now. I would harken back to say when I said I want to gain 10 pounds, what I would tell most people not to do. I would probably have to do that, because I have to put it on everywhere to
Right.
compete with, the level of these guys are the best in the world. If you win a show like the New York Pro, I think you qualify for the Arnold and the Olympia, or you're on your way to the Olympia. So it's a stretch. it's a stretch. I do have a couple of injuries. I have an impinged shoulder, and I have you know, some knee issues. Not that that's an excuse on why I won't train hard and try to do it, because I'm absolutely going to try to do it. But we'll see what happens.
All right. For about my last question, is there any kind of pros you're looking out for, or any kind that you might admire right now that's competing in classic physique, or even open, or anything like that?
Yeah. You know, I think Chris Bumstead is something really special. I think he's 22 years old, and the amount of the quality of muscle that guy's packed on his frame, and just the overall aesthetics and the symmetry that he has, that's going to be really that's going to set a standard that's going to be hard to beat. There's a couple of good. Breon looks great. There's a few other guys that are up and coming right now that look really good. But for me, when I think of classic physique and I see how Bumstead is put together, that guy is something really special. I think he's going to win the Olympia this year, and he's going to be sitting in that spot for a while.
Okay. So it looks like we have one question. Someone asks, what's your favorite, your all-time favorite bodybuilder? Because I do let some of the audience ask questions near the end of the interview. So what is your all-time favorite bodybuilder?
Well, I'm old school, right? I've been doing this stuff a long time. And I'll tell you, if you look at my Instagram, I've competed against Kai Green when we were teenagers. If you go back and scroll down and look through, you're going to see a 15-year-old Kai Green standing next to me when I'm 18 years old. I didn't beat him, even though I was way bigger than him at the time. But at 15 years old, he still beat me. And but old school, when I was in high school and stuff like that, of course, Dorian Yates was plastered all over my wall. Look, there's a Kevin Levrone, awesome bodybuilder. I'd be remiss if I left out Ronnie Coleman. I mean, maybe the best of all time, most definitely the most massive of all time. And of course, everybody loves Arnold, and and Frank Zane and those guys too. But for the hardcore bodybuilder, when I think of bodybuilding back in the day and when I was a kid, Dorian Yates to me was a true pioneer. He broke through and set the standard for this sport in terms of hardcore bodybuilding. That stuff still holds up today that he was doing 30 years ago. So
Right.
as far as somebody bringing something into the sport where guys are still able to take from that long ago when they didn't have the science that we have today, that guy was something special.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to thank you again for coming in today for the interview, because that was really awesome. I actually learned a lot learning from you, just hearing you talk. So I really wish you the best for this off season and coming up on that New York Pro, man. I can't wait to see what you're going to bring.
You stay in touch with me, man. We'll be talking, and thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely no problem. You did the community a great service. A lot of people, and we're going to put this on SoundCloud and other things, so when people are doing their cardio, they can just listen to you talk and get their information. So it's really awesome.
Anytime. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a great day, all right?
Take care.
Bye-bye.